My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 22 years old, and I've been married to Daniel for 11 of them. If you had met us 5 years ago, you might have thought we were the kind of couple that belonged in glossy magazine ads, laughing over wine, wrapped up in cozy blankets on a Sunday morning, kissing like we didn't have the rest of the world waiting outside our door. But that was before everything started to cool. I keep replaying the early days in my head, like some hopeless romantic masochist, wondering if I imagined the way he used to look at me. That first year, I used to feel seen. His eyes followed me in a way that made me blush, made me feel like the only woman in the room. I'd catch him staring across the table at dinner, his hand brushing mine under the table, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin as if he couldn't help himself. Back then, physical affection was effortless. The kisses weren't just lips pressed together, they carried warmth, heat, and that electricity you can't manufacture. Sometimes I think about that first winter in our tiny apartment when he pulled me into his lap just to keep me warm, pressing his lips to the back of my neck as I laughed. The smell of him, the way his arms wrapped around me like I was home, it was intoxicating. But somewhere along the line, the warmth began to fade. At first, it was subtle. I remember one night about 3 years ago, lying in bed after a long day. I curled against him like I always did, waiting for that familiar sense of closeness. But when I kissed him goodnight, his lips felt distracted. Like he was already halfway gone. He didn't pull me closer afterward, he just rolled onto his back, phone glowing on his nightstand, his attention miles away. I told myself marriage gets like this sometimes. People get comfortable. Busy. Tired. I knew the difference between a rut and something breaking, at least I thought I did. Then came the hugs that felt like obligations, not instinct. The pecks on the cheek that carried no heat, no pause afterward like he wanted to linger. Even his hand on my waist as we cooked dinner together started to feel rehearsed. Like we were actors playing the roles of husband and wife rather than living them. I can't tell you exactly when the dread settled in. Maybe it was the night he came home late, smelling like cologne that wasn't his. Or the weekend he spent with the guys and came back looking both restless and exhausted, avoiding my eyes as he tossed his bag on the bed. But the moment it really hit me, that cold, sinking feeling that something had shifted for good, was on my birthday last year. He gave me this small velvet box, a delicate gold necklace inside. It was beautiful. Thoughtful. He smiled as he clasped it around my neck, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Happy birthday, babe." And I stood there smiling, thanking him, pretending everything was fine, while inside, I was screaming. Because I realized I didn't feel anything. Not the joy I used to feel when he surprised me, not the thrill of being cherished. It was like I was watching us from the outside. Him giving me this perfect gift. Me smiling like the perfect wife. And the space between us, growing bigger every day, like neither of us wanted to name it. That was the moment. The one where I knew something was broken. Not just between us, but inside me too. And I couldn't stop wondering who he thought about when he kissed me goodnight. Daniel is a doctor. That's something I used to brag about when we first met, his long shifts, the way he carried himself like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. I loved that about him, once. It felt noble, like I was standing beside someone who mattered, who saved lives while I kept our little world running at home. But over the last year, that same thing, the long hours, the tired eyes, the phone calls at midnight, started to feel like an excuse. Or maybe not an excuse, more like a wall I couldn't climb over anymore. One evening, about 2 months after my birthday, he came home late again. I was in the kitchen, reheating leftovers, the soft hum of the microwave filling the silence. He walked in still in his scrubs, kissed the top of my head, and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You look beautiful," he murmured into my neck, his hands sliding over my waist. I froze. It wasn't that I didn't want him. God, there were days when I missed him so much it ached. But this sudden grasp for physical closeness after days of emotional distance, it felt like trying to cover a cracked wall with a fresh coat of paint. Pretty, but pointless. Hey, I said softly, stepping out of his arms, pretending to check the food. You hungry? He paused. I didn't have to look to know his brow had furrowed. Yeah. Sure. The air thickened instantly. I could feel his confusion behind me, like he was asking himself what he did wrong. Maybe I should have told him. Maybe I should have turned around, touched his face, said, I miss you, but I need to feel you here, not just your hands, not just your body, but you. But instead, I stayed quiet, dishing out pasta like everything was fine. We ate at the table with the TV flickering in the background. He told me about a patient, some emergency surgery that saved a teenager's life. I nodded in all the right places, smiled faintly, but I felt like a ghost in my own home. After dinner, he reached for me again on the couch, pulling me against him as some crime show played in the background. His fingers traced patterns on my thigh. Missed you, he whispered, kissing my hair. And I wanted to scream because this was him trying. I knew it. He thought holding me, touching me, would fix whatever was wrong. But all I felt was how far away he still was. I shifted, just slightly, and he went rigid. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing, I lied. He sighed, frustrated. Claire, you keep pulling away lately. I'm trying here. And there it was. The fight hovering between us like smoke. I know you are, I said quietly, my eyes on the TV. I can't always flip a switch, Daniel. Sometimes I need to talk first. I need to feel like we're us again before we what? His voice had that edge now, the one that made me shrink a little. Before I'm allowed to touch my own wife? I flinched. That's not what I'm saying. But he was already shaking his head, running a hand through his hair like he couldn't make sense of me. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe I couldn't either. Because here's the thing, I wanted him. I did. But I also wanted to feel like I wasn't just a body he came home to after saving everyone else. I wanted him to ask how I was doing. To look at me the way he used to, like there was no one else in the world. Instead, we sat there on the couch, two people tangled up physically but drifting miles apart where it actually mattered. And the worst part? Neither of us knew how to say what we really needed. It happened on a Sunday morning, one of those slow, gray ones where the rain taps against the windows like it has nowhere else to be. I was in the kitchen making coffee, wearing one of his old t-shirts because it was soft and familiar. Daniel came in, hair messy from sleep, and kissed the side of my neck as he reached around me for a mug. Morning, beautiful, he said, his voice still heavy with sleep. I gave him a small smile, pouring the coffee. It should have felt sweet, the kind of domestic affection I used to crave, but all I felt was tired. He set the mug down, then slid his arms around my waist from behind, his hands warm on my stomach. It was innocent enough at first, just a hug. But then his lips started trailing soft kisses along my shoulder, moving lower, his hands tightening on my hips. And something inside me snapped tight, like a rubber band pulled too far. Daniel, I said quickly, shifting forward, pretending to need something from the counter. He paused, confused. What? I was just kissing you. I know, I said too fast. He stepped back slightly, watching me. You okay? I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like paper stretched thin. Yeah. Fine. Just coffee first, okay? The look on his face, part hurt, part frustration, made my stomach twist. We sat at the table, sipping coffee. He reached for my hand across the table, rubbing his thumb over my knuckles like he used to when we were dating. You've been distant lately, he said softly. Did I do something? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because how could I explain it? How could I tell him that every time he touched me lately, I felt like I was being pushed into something I wasn't ready for, even when all I wanted was to feel close again? Instead, I just shrugged. I'm tired. Work's been a lot. He nodded like he believed me, but I saw his jaw tighten. He leaned over and kissed me, slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that used to melt me. But I felt nothing. Worse than nothing, I felt like I was acting. I kissed him back because that's what wives do, right? That's what keeps the peace. When he pulled away, smiling faintly like maybe we were okay again, I felt this flash of guilt mixed with anger. Because we weren't okay. He stood, grabbed his phone from the counter, and smacked my butt lightly as he passed, playful, the way he used to when it made me laugh. But I didn't laugh this time. I flinched before I could stop myself. His hand froze mid-air. "Claire, what was that?" I forced a small laugh, shaking my head like it was nothing. "You just startled me." But inside, I was screaming. Because I knew he wasn't trying to hurt me. I knew he was reaching out the only way he knew how. And still, I felt cornered by it. The worst part was, I wanted to want him. I wanted to feel that rush again, the butterflies, the heat. Instead, everything felt like pressure, like I was supposed to give something I didn't even know how to feel anymore. And as he walked out of the kitchen, phone in hand, probably thinking I was just moody or tired, I stood there gripping my coffee mug so hard my fingers ached, asking myself the same question I'd been asking for months now. Why does everything have to turn into sex? It was supposed to be a nice dinner. Daniel had made reservations at this little Italian place downtown, the kind with dim lighting and candles on the tables, the kind we used to go to back when things were easy. He said he wanted to do something nice for us. I spent half an hour trying to feel pretty, curling my hair, putting on the red dress he used to love. I thought maybe this would be the night we found our way back to each other. But even as we sat across from each other, wine glasses sweating between us, I felt that tightness in my chest. That distance. He reached for my hand across the table, his thumb brushing my skin. "You look beautiful, Claire." I smiled, but it felt thin. "Thanks." We ordered pasta, salad, wine. He asked about work, about my sister, about things he thought mattered. And I answered, because that's what you do. But every time he smiled at me like everything was fine, I wanted to scream. When the food came, he reached for my hand again, lacing his fingers through mine like he was trying to close the gap between us with sheer determination. "I missed this," he said softly. And that was it. The words cracked something open in me I didn't even know I was holding shut. "Missed what, Daniel?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. He blinked. "Us. This. Dinner. You." I laughed, but it wasn't the right kind of laugh. It was bitter, ugly. "You miss me? Which part of me? The part you barely talk to anymore? The part you come home to after saving the world but can't even look in the eye?" His brows drew together. "Claire, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about this," I snapped, waving a hand between us. "This act we keep playing. Like everything's fine if we just hold hands at dinner and pretend." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. "I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying." "Trying?" The word burned in my mouth. "You kiss me like you're checking something off a list. You touch me like it's supposed to fix everything, but you don't even ask how I am, Daniel. You don't even see me anymore." People at nearby tables were staring now. I could feel it, the weight of their eyes, but I couldn't stop. Months of silence and resentment were flooding out of me like a dam had broken.